Nobody expected Graham Norton's famous red sofa to become the stage for television's most uncomfortable royal encounter. When Prince Harry faced Graham's quick wit live on air, one unexpected exchange allegedly left the audience stunned and sparked fierce debate over who truly lost control. Was it harmless comedy, a brutal public humiliation, or simply a moment taken out of context? So do you think Graham went too far, or was Harry treated fairly? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more fascinating stories. Silence replaced Friday night laughter. Harry onto the famous red sofa with the relaxed confidence audiences had come to expect. Warm smiles, polite greetings, and light conversation suggested the interview would follow the familiar rhythm that had defined the show for years. Viewers expected playful stories, gentle teasing, and moments of laughter shared between host and guest. Instead, almost immediately, the mood began shifting in a direction that nobody inside the studio seemed prepared for. Something subtle changed before either man had said very much at all. Prince Harry appeared composed, offering a measured smile while settling into his seat. From the outside, everything looked perfectly ordinary. Graham maintained his trademark charm, speaking with the easy humor that had made countless celebrities lower their guard over the years. His relaxed delivery encouraged confidence rather than confrontation, creating an atmosphere where unexpected admissions often surfaced naturally. His reputation made the opening moments feel reassuring, encouraging both the audience and viewers at home to believe another enjoyable conversation was about to unfold. Yet, Graham did not remain with casual topics for long. Instead of continuing harmless celebrity banter, he smoothly guided the discussion toward questions connected to Harry's recent public image. His tone stayed friendly, but the subject matter became noticeably more serious. The transition was so natural that it almost passed unnoticed until the audience realized the conversation had quietly crossed an invisible line. What began as light entertainment suddenly carried the weight of public scrutiny. The audience response reflected that growing uncertainty. Early laughter slowly faded, replaced by attentive silence. Faces that had arrived expecting comedy now watched closely for every expression and every carefully chosen word. Graham never appeared aggressive, nor did he abandon his trademark wit. Instead, he allowed simple questions to linger just long enough for their implications to settle across the studio. That approach created tension without raised voices or dramatic interruptions, making the atmosphere feel increasingly uncomfortable. Prince Harry answered carefully, choosing his words with visible caution. His response neither escalated the discussion nor fully addressed the concern Graham had introduced. Instead, it suggested a desire to avoid saying more than necessary while remaining respectful. Some observers might interpret that restraint as understandable under public pressure, while others could view it as hesitation. The uncertainty itself became part of the unfolding story, leaving room for different interpretations without offering immediate clarity. As the first exchange concluded, it became increasingly clear this interview would not resemble the usual celebrity conversation audiences expected from a Friday evening chat show. Graham's calm persistence and Harry's guarded responses created an unusual dynamic that neither laughter nor polite smiles could completely disguise. Whatever happened next seemed likely to shape the rest of the evening, leaving viewers wondering whether the conversation would recover its warmth or continue moving toward an even more revealing confrontation. But beneath the surface of that uncertainty, there lingered a deeper question about how much of what the audience believed they were witnessing was performance, and how much was unfiltered reality. The studio lights continued to glow warmly, yet the atmosphere felt increasingly fragile, as if any further question might shift everything again outside the studio. The conversation was already taking on a life of its own far beyond. As laughter spreads across the studio, something unexpected begins to shift beneath the surface. Did Graham just outmaneuver Harry without direct confrontation? Why does Harry's confidence start to crack under humor rather than criticism? And what does the audience sense that he cannot fully understand yet? Let's find out. Laughter suddenly changed everything completely. Prince Harry tried to steady the conversation as the interview continued, answering Graham Norton's first difficult question with careful, measured words. The atmosphere still carried traces of the friendly welcome that had opened the evening, Yet something had undeniably shifted. The audience remained attentive, sensing that the discussion was no longer following the familiar pattern expected from a relaxed Friday night chat show. Graham listened patiently without interrupting, allowing Harry to finish before responding in the calm, playful style that had defined his career. Rather than challenging him directly, he offered a light-hearted observation that appeared harmless on the surface, but quietly highlighted an inconsistency in Harry's explanation. The remark landed with perfect timing, prompting genuine laughter across the studio. It was not loud or mocking, but spontaneous enough to reveal how naturally the audience had understood the point. For a brief moment, the tension eased. Yet the laughter also marked the beginning of a very different dynamic between host and guest. Harry acknowledged the comment with restraint, though he did not join the laughter surrounding him. His expression remained controlled, and his response became noticeably more cautious. Graham, meanwhile, never abandoned his relaxed demeanor. He smiled, maintained steady eye contact, and continued speaking with warmth instead of confrontation. That contrast became increasingly significant. Instead of raising his voice or pressing aggressively, he relied on carefully chosen humor to encourage reflection, leaving viewers to draw their own conclusions. The approach made the exchange feel less like an argument and more like a test of composure unfolding in real time. As the discussion moved forward, subtle changes in body language became impossible to ignore. Harry appeared more guarded than before, choosing each sentence carefully while avoiding unnecessary elaboration. Graham remained comfortably seated, speaking with the same confidence that audiences had watched for years. The audience sensed the difference almost immediately. Earlier laughter had been effortless, but now every smile carried an element of uncertainty, as though everyone recognized the conversation had entered unfamiliar territory without either participant openly acknowledging it. Different viewers could easily interpret the moment in different ways. Some might see Graham's humor as a fair method of exploring difficult public questions without unnecessary hostility. Others might believe Harry deserved greater room to explain himself before another joke shifted attention back toward the contradiction being discussed. That uncertainty became part of the interview's growing fascination, encouraging debate instead of delivering simple answers. Neither man dramatically changed his tone, yet the balance inside the conversation appeared to be evolving with every exchange. By the close of this stage, the evening no longer resembled ordinary celebrity entertainment. Graham's wit had begun shaping the rhythm of the interview, while Harry's increasingly careful responses hinted that the conversation was becoming harder to navigate. Whether this changing balance reflected confidence, discomfort, or simple misunderstanding remained uncertain, but it clearly suggested that the most revealing moments were still waiting to unfold. Yet even as the cameras continued rolling, there was an unspoken awareness that something irreversible had shifted inside the room itself. Every pause now carried weight, every glance seemed measured, and the space between words felt wider than before. What began as entertainment was quietly becoming scrutiny, under lights that refused to soften completely in real time, without either side fully realizing it, yet fully. Why does a single question freeze the entire room? What is Graham really pressing Harry to reveal? And why can't he respond instantly? As the silence deepens, what truth is hanging in the air, and who will break first under pressure? Keep watching. One question changed everything. The conversation reached a turning point when Graham Norton gently narrowed his focus to a single, straightforward question. Until then, the interview had moved through a series of light remarks mixed with more thoughtful discussion. But this moment felt different. There was nothing dramatic about the way the question was asked. Graham's tone remained calm, conversational, and unmistakably warm. Yet its simplicity carried unusual weight, inviting a response that could not easily be avoided or redirected. The studio, which had earlier echoed with laughter, gradually settled into complete silence as everyone waited for Prince Harry to answer. Harry did not respond immediately. He remained composed, but the brief pause became impossible to ignore. Graham offered no interruption, no follow-up, and no attempt to fill the silence. Instead, he waited patiently, allowing the moment to unfold naturally. That decision shifted attention away from the question itself and toward the pause that followed. Cameras lingered on expressions rather than words, capturing subtle reactions from both men and from the audience watching closely. The stillness created its own form of tension. Viewers no longer seemed interested in hearing a clever exchange or another humorous observation. Instead, curiosity centered on what would happen next. Every passing second appeared to increase the significance of the unanswered question. Graham remained relaxed in his chair, showing neither frustration nor urgency. His willingness to wait suggested confidence that the silence itself had become part of the conversation. When Harry finally spoke, his reply was careful and restrained. He appeared determined to choose each word thoughtfully, avoiding any statement that might create further misunderstanding. The answer addressed part of the discussion, yet it left room for different interpretations. Some viewers might regard his caution as understandable given the public attention surrounding him. Others might conclude that the hesitation reflected the difficulty of responding to a challenging question without reopening familiar debates. Neither interpretation could be confirmed, leaving the audience to reach its own conclusions. Throughout the exchange, Graham resisted turning the moment into a confrontation. He listened attentively, acknowledged Harry's response, and maintained the same measured tone that had characterized the interview from the beginning. That consistency became increasingly important. Rather than relying on raised voices or dramatic accusations, the discussion drew its intensity from patience, timing, and the visible contrast between a direct question and a cautious reply. It was a reminder that television's most memorable moments are not always created through conflict, but through quiet uncertainty. The atmosphere inside the studio had changed completely. The audience remained deeply engaged, sensing that the conversation had entered more thoughtful territory than anyone expected at the start of the evening. Whether the pause reflected careful consideration, public pressure, or simple hesitation remained open to interpretation. But it clearly marked a turning point that would influence everything that followed, leaving the larger story unresolved and the outcome still uncertain. The moment did not end with the conversation itself, but continued to echo long after the cameras shifted away. Online reactions began multiplying, each interpretation competing with another for dominance. Some focused on the silence, others on the wording of the question, and many on Harry's measured delivery. Within minutes, fragments of the exchange were being replayed and analyzed, each angle reshaping public perception once again. Yet beneath the noise, a deeper question lingered unresolved for everyone watching closely. The meaning of that silence continued to divide opinion across audiences everywhere, long after the broadcast ended. As the atmosphere inside the studio shifts, the laughter begins to fade into something far more unsettling. What is really being revealed beneath the surface? Who is truly in control of the moment, and how far will this interview go before everything changes? Stay with us. Every face told different stories. What had begun as a lively television interview slowly transformed into something far more compelling. The audience no longer reacted like spectators enjoying another celebrity appearance. Instead, they became silent witnesses to a conversation that seemed to grow more revealing with every passing minute. The playful atmosphere that usually surrounded Graham Norton's famous red sofa had not completely disappeared, but it now competed with an unmistakable feeling of anticipation. Everyone inside the studio appeared to sense that the interview had crossed an invisible line, and there was no obvious way back. Graham Norton never abandoned the calm, welcoming style that had made him one of television's most respected hosts. He continued speaking with warmth, mixing thoughtful questions with carefully timed humor. His approach remained consistent, refusing to become confrontational even as the discussion ventured into more uncomfortable territory. Rather than forcing dramatic exchanges, he allowed the conversation to breathe, trusting that honest reactions often revealed more than aggressive questioning ever could. That patience quietly shifted the rhythm of the interview, encouraging every person in the studio to pay closer attention. Prince Harry, however, appeared noticeably more reserved than he had at the beginning of the conversation. His earlier confidence gradually gave way to measured responses and increasingly cautious expressions. Before answering, He seemed to consider every sentence carefully, aware that each word might shape how the audience interpreted his position. His guarded manner did not necessarily suggest defeat, but it reflected the growing pressure surrounding the discussion. Whether he was protecting his privacy or simply choosing his words with greater care remained open to interpretation, adding another layer of uncertainty to an already complex exchange. As the conversation widened beyond the original topic, every new question seemed connected to a larger picture rather than a single moment. Graham gently guided the discussion from one issue to another, allowing previous answers to influence the next line of inquiry without appearing repetitive. Each transition encouraged viewers to reconsider earlier statements, creating the impression that the interview was revealing patterns instead of isolated moments. That gradual expansion increased the emotional weight without relying on raised voices or dramatic accusations. The audience responded differently as this pattern emerged. Laughter became less frequent but far more meaningful whenever it appeared. Some smiles carried genuine amusement, while others reflected surprise or uncertainty. A few faces remained completely still, watching closely as though searching for hidden meaning behind every exchange. The divided reactions suggested that everyone was experiencing the interview differently, making the atmosphere feel unpredictable, despite Graham's steady control of the conversation. Behind the cameras, even the production team seemed aware that the interview was unfolding in an unexpected direction. No dramatic interruption occurred, yet every pause, every glance, and every carefully delivered response appeared to carry greater significance than anyone had anticipated before filming began. What started as ordinary entertainment now resembled an unforgettable public examination, with the audience becoming an active part of the story itself. That growing involvement hinted that whatever happened next would shape not only the interview's outcome, but also how the entire evening would ultimately be remembered. Control shifts in ways no one expected as the atmosphere tightens on stage. What is Graham really doing beneath the humor? Why does every attempt to steer the conversation seem to fail? And how far will this silent power struggle eventually continue? Stay tuned. Graham quietly takes control. The studio had become unnaturally still by the time Prince Harry tried to change the subject. After several uncomfortable exchanges, he shifted toward safer territory, speaking about broader public issues rather than the question that had dominated the conversation. For a moment, it seemed the interview might finally return to the familiar rhythm of a celebrity chat show. Graham Norton listened politely, nodded, and allowed the new topic a few seconds of air. Then, with the same relaxed smile that had opened the evening, he guided the discussion back to the unresolved point everyone in the room was still thinking about. That gentle redirection changed the atmosphere again. Graham did not interrupt or accuse. He simply connected Harry's new answer to an earlier statement and asked how the two fit together. The question sounded almost casual, but its implications were difficult to ignore. Harry paused before responding, and the audience immediately sensed that the conversation had tightened. What made the moment so striking was Graham's refusal to become aggressive. He remained calm, humorous, and seemingly friendly, yet he never allowed the central issue to disappear. Harry attempted another pivot, this time emphasizing personal intentions and future plans. Graham acknowledged the point, then added a brief joke about how even his own family would not let him change the subject that easily. The audience laughed and applauded, not because the remark was cruel, but because it captured exactly what viewers had been watching unfold. The applause was brief, but it carried a significance that earlier laughter had lacked. It suggested that many in the studio believed Graham had successfully regained control of the interview. As the exchange continued, Harry's discomfort became harder to miss. He adjusted his posture, shortened some answers, and chose his words with increasing care. Graham, meanwhile, looked entirely at ease. He kept his voice level, his expression warm, and his questions precise. The contrast between the two men became the story. One appeared to be working harder with every answer, while the other seemed to grow more confident simply by asking another quiet follow-up. Viewers could interpret the moment in different ways. Supporters of Harry might argue that he was being pressed on issues he had already explained publicly. Others might see Graham's persistence as a fair attempt to resolve contradictions left hanging in the conversation. What neither side could deny was that the balance of power inside the studio had shifted. The host was now setting the pace, deciding which questions mattered, and determining when the audience laughed. By the end of this stage, the interview no longer felt like a guest appearance designed to promote a public image. It felt like a test of composure, unfolding in real time. Graham had not raised his voice, attacked his guest, or delivered a dramatic speech. Yet through patience, timing, and carefully placed humor, he had gradually steered the evening back to the question Harry seemed least eager to answer. The larger confrontation was still ahead, but the direction of the interview suddenly looked much harder for Harry to change. What happens when an emotional defense meets calm restraint in front of a silent audience? Did Graham's measured silence shift the room more than Harry's words? And why did the audience suddenly hesitate before reacting? Stay glued. The moment, everything shifted. The studio lights felt harsher as the conversation moved into its most intense phase. By this point in the interview, Prince Harry had already been pushed through a series of careful questions that seemed to tighten around him with every exchange. Now, he leaned forward and delivered an emotional defense, speaking more openly than he had earlier in the evening. His words carried frustration, but also a clear attempt to be understood rather than judged. The audience, who had followed every turn closely, sensed immediately that the atmosphere had changed again, this time into something heavier and more personal. Graham Norton listened without interruption, maintaining the same calm posture he had held throughout the interview. He did not react with surprise or challenge the emotional tone being presented. Instead, he waited until Harry had fully finished speaking. That silence itself became part of the tension, stretching across the studio in a way that made even small movements noticeable. Cameras captured every reaction, the audience frozen in attention, producers watching from behind the glass, and the subtle shift in Harry's expression as he waited for what would come next. When Graham finally responded, his voice remained steady and controlled. There was no visible anger, no raised tone, and no attempt to match the emotional weight of Harry's words. Instead, he replied with careful restraint, choosing phrasing that sounded almost conversational, but carried an unmistakable firmness underneath. The contrast between Harry's emotional delivery and Graham's measured calm created a sharp divide in the room. It was not a clash of volume, but a clash of tone and interpretation, where every word felt weighted by public expectation. The audience reacted in a way no one seemed to anticipate. Instead of laughter or immediate applause, there was silence. It was a rare kind of silence that felt active rather than empty, as if everyone was processing what they had just heard before deciding how to respond. Some leaned forward slightly, others remained still, and a few glanced toward each other, searching for shared understanding. The studio atmosphere, usually filled with rhythm and reaction, became suspended in uncertainty. After several seconds, a delayed wave of applause slowly spread through the room. It was not loud or unanimous, but cautious and uneven, suggesting mixed interpretations of what had just unfolded. That reaction only deepened the sense that something significant had occurred, even if no one agreed on exactly what it meant. Cameras continued to record closely, capturing every subtle expression that might later be replayed and analyzed by viewers outside the studio. In the aftermath of the exchange, the interview felt like it had reached its peak intensity. Graham remained composed, Harry sat back with a guarded expression, and the audience settled into a quieter, more reflective state. Some might see Graham's restraint as professionalism under pressure, while others might interpret it as a subtle form of control that shaped the direction of the moment without overt confrontation. Either way, the exchange stood out as the point where emotion, timing, and silence combined into something far more powerful than argument alone, leaving the narrative poised on the edge of its outcome. Who truly left the studio in control, and why are viewers still dissecting every second of the exchange? Did Graham's composure mask something deeper, or did Harry's reactions reveal more than intended? And as reactions explode online, what truth is everyone missing at this moment? After the final applause, the moment the cameras stopped rolling inside the Graham Norton studio did not bring an end to the story. Instead, it marked the beginning of a second wave of reactions that spread far beyond the red sofa. Prince Harry's appearance had officially concluded, Graham Norton had closed the interview with his usual calm professionalism, and the studio lights slowly shifted back to normal. Yet inside the room, no one behaved as if the event was truly over. The air still carried the weight of what had just unfolded, and that lingering tension refused to disappear with the broadcast. As the audience began to leave their seats, conversations broke out immediately. Some viewers replayed specific lines from the exchange, trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. Others focused on Graham Norton's tone, describing it as calm but firm, while some insisted the most striking part had been Harry's visible struggle to respond at key moments. Even without a single unified opinion, everyone agreed that the interview had felt different from anything expected on a typical Friday night broadcast. It was no longer just entertainment. It had become a talking point shaped by interpretation. Behind the scenes, production staff quietly discussed how the evening had unfolded. Nothing about the interview had been formally disrupted, yet several crew members acknowledged that the energy in the room had shifted more than once. The balance between humor and seriousness, so carefully maintained in most episodes, had leaned repeatedly into tension before snapping back again. Graham's ability to maintain composure while guiding the conversation was already becoming part of internal discussion, with some viewing it as controlled professionalism and others as subtle dominance in real time. Outside the studio, early reactions began to form almost immediately. Commentators and viewers began sharing fragmented impressions, each focusing on different aspects of the exchange. Some highlighted Graham's steady handling of difficult moments, while others questioned whether the pressure placed on Harry had been too direct for a light entertainment setting. The absence of a clear, universally accepted narrative only intensified interest as people debated what had actually been seen versus how it was being interpreted. On social platforms, discussion spread quickly, dividing opinion even further. Clips of key moments were repeatedly analyzed, slowed down, and reinterpreted, with viewers drawing entirely different conclusions from the same footage. The contrast between perception and reaction became the central focus of the debate, turning the interview into a broader conversation about how public figures are challenged in live environments. Graham Norton's professionalism and Harry's responses both became symbols used to support opposing viewpoints. By the time the initial reactions began to settle, the interview had already moved beyond its runtime. It was no longer defined by what happened on the sofa, but by how differently it was remembered, repeated, and discussed. The evening closed without resolution, leaving behind competing interpretations rather than a single clear outcome, and reinforcing the idea that in live television, the most powerful moments are often the ones that continue evolving long after the cameras have stopped recording. So, what do you think? Did Graham Norton really humiliate Prince Harry live, or was it just sharp comedy misunderstood by viewers? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this.